No grounds eviction is something that all of us in this place, well certainly on the progressive side of politics, have been pushing for a decade at least. And these reforms go some way towards redressing the power imbalance between tenants and landlords, and tenants and the profit-driven property market. The Greens have been advocating for these reforms, as I say, for over a decade, and I acknowledge the incredible hard work of our housing spokesperson, the member for Newtown, and her office, as well as successive staff that have worked with her and our party room, as well as the work of our Greens members and our communities for their advocacy and voice on this issue. I also congratulate the Minister and the Premier for making good on these reforms that Labor committed to in the 2023 election. In the Ballina electorate, I want to particularly recognise the work and advocacy of the Northern Rivers Tenants Advisory Service, the Northern Rivers Community Legal Centre and House U for their work standing up for renters' rights. But Mr Speaker, make no mistake, renters across New South Wales have been doing it tough for at least 10 years. Constant rent increases, being evicted for trivial reasons, and an inability to feel safe and secure even when you have a lease. And this has been the model of renting in this state for many years. As a lifelong renter before I was elected to Parliament, I can say that additionally in the Ballina electorate, the rental crisis has been going on for many decades. Being kicked out of a home because it's festival season, or being kicked out of a home because the landlord can make more money on the short-term holiday market has become the norm in my area, not the exception. And of course, the long-term impact of the prevalence of short-term holiday letting and the subsequent shortage of rental properties being available has directly led to exorbitant rents and people being priced out of the rental market in my region. And then you add to that the 2022 floods, and then we have the beyond crisis, absolute housing crisis in my region. Talk to any renter in the Ballina electorate and they will have a horror story about unfair evictions, price bidding on rents, which thankfully now is illegal, the extreme lack of rental availability, and 300 plus applications for homes with rent prices that match the suburbs of Kirribilli and Bondi, without the access to public transport or any of the health, education or social supports available to Sydney-siders. That is why my community is so excited about now that we have a 60-day cap on whole homes that can be rented as short-term holiday lets across most of Byron Shire. We're already seeing a significant increase in rental properties being available, and I believe we will see rent prices come down over time. And it is certainly a model for other areas with high tourist visitor economies. This legislation comes at a time where the rental system across the state is at complete crisis point. And while we know that had the coalition government listened to renters and the Greens any time in the last 12 years they were in government and taken action, we would not be in this dire situation. But as they say, better late than never. Mr Speaker, I'm only going to speak briefly about the top lines because I know we're moving forward, but this legislation ends no grounds evictions for fixed term and periodic leases and limits how often rent can be increased. It bans renters from being asked to pay for background checks, and it makes it easier for renters to pay their rent. The status quo is that a landlord can end a periodic or fixed term lease once that fixed term ends without giving any reason to the tenant. Now there must be a valid and justifiable reason for ending any lease, and it tips the balance of power towards the renter and can provide a sense of security for the tenant if that property continues to be rented out. The bill replaces provisions that currently enable no grounds evictions with a new subdivision requiring one of the following specific grounds for termination notices: breach of tenancy agreement, actual or proposed sale of premises, demolition of or significant renovations or repairs to premises, tenant no longer eligible for affordable housing schemes, premises required for key worker accommodation, premises no longer to be used as residential premises, or landlord or family residing at the premises. Mr Speaker, there is some improvement for pets on paper. The Greens are seeking greater surety for tenants, and certainly we think that the status quo in this bill does not capture the reality, for example, of stratas and it puts the onus on the tenant to take the matter to NCAT if they want to make the case that a denial is not a valid reason. Now, of course, obviously we're not holding the bill up, but we would like to see a blanket presumption that any tenant can have pets and that the onus is on the landlord to make the case otherwise. We welcome the fact that under this law there can be no more than one rent increase every 12 months for all lease types. The bill will also appoint the Rental Commissioner as a permanent member of the Rental Bond Board, and the Greens welcome this. We are seeking to insert a new section requiring the Secretary of the Department of Fair Trading to collect data on the grounds used to evict tenants, and we will seek to require the Secretary to publish annual reports containing that information, and we also seek a statutory review of the entire Act as soon as possible after 5 years from the commencement of this section. We welcome this reform, and as I say, congratulations to everyone that has gotten behind these much needed reforms.